Hi there, this is Olivier Poupenet, Head of DevRel at Orkes, and this video is to introduce you to the Conductor Typescript SDK. So the first thing we're going to do is to set up our project, and for that I'm going to open my terminal window, create a directory, let's call it demo app. I'm going to go into demo app and I'm going to initialize my project, doing npm init, so that at least we have a package.json and we can import the dependencies that we'll need for this project. First one, of course, will be TypeScript and TS Node. And the other dependency will be the Conductor SDK that can be found on io-orkes/conductor-javascript. Alright, good. Let's open our code editor and see what we have now. Good, package.json has been updated with our dependencies. We're gonna create our TypeScript configuration file. And for the sake of the demo, I'm gonna just pass the snippet that I have previously. And it's just like the standard compiler options. We don't need more than that. I'm gonna create a new file. Our main file will be index.ts. And I'm going to update our package.json to define the build and start scripts. To build, we are going to use the TypeScript compiler, tsc index.ts. And for the start script, we're going to just launch node of the index.js that will be generated by the TypeScript compilation. Alright, so let's start coding now. And the first thing I'm going to do is to import the relevant class from our SDK. And the first one is Orkes Conductor client. That's the main class we're going to use. I'm going to do it from the Conductor JavaScript, that is from our list of dependencies. And what we need to do here is to create a variable, a constant variable that will contain all the server settings. Server settings are very important in order to make sure you can make a connection to your Conductor server. So what you will need is a key ID, a key secret, and the third attribute will be the server URL. For this demo, I'm going to use my own instance that is in the cloud. Its name is op-orkesconductor.io and of course /API. So replace that by your URL, but keep of course the /API, which is generic. This is my Conductor instance, and I go to the console, I go to change the access control and create a new application that I'm gonna call demo app. It doesn't have to be the same name, but it's much better if you do. And I'm gonna give the restricted role for polling, updating, and doing everything about workers. It gives me key ID and key secret. I'm going to copy the key ID and put it in my attribute in my app. I'm going to do the same for the key secret. Alright, good. We're ready now to create our first worker. So for that, I go back to my code and I have a few tasks to do. So the first thing will be to define a constant called client promise that will invoke the Orkes Conductor client with our server settings. Then I'm gonna create an async function that will get that promise. I'm gonna call it create task manager. I'm gonna create another async function that will be my main function. And I'm gonna invoke the main function, of course. So basically this is the structure of my application to host a worker. Now we need to fulfill what is inside each function, and for that I'm gonna import another class that will be task manager. The task manager will help us to do the polling to the conductor server. So I'm going to create another constant called client that will wait for the client promise to be resolved. And the only thing I have to do from my task manager is to return a new instance of task manager. And I have a few parameters to put. As you can see, we need the client, we need the workers, and we need some configurations. So for the configurations, we're going to put what will be the logger. We're going to use the console. We're going to have some options as well. First one will be the concurrency. How many concurrency execution we authorize to that. We're going to say 2. The polling interval. We're going to say poll every 100 milliseconds. And that's it for the options. From the main function, we need to invoke our task manager by awaiting the resolution of the create task manager. Right, and we're going to start the polling of our task manager. That's it. That's basically the structure we need every time we need to do a worker. And now we need to put a worker task in our task manager here. I'm going to create a new worker. I'm going to define the name of the task that will be associated to this worker. My task, just to be super inventive. And I'm going to define what would be the execution. It's going to be an async function that's going to have some input parameters. So our task here is going to do something very simple. We're going to create a variable called message. We're going to say hello TypeScript fans, for instance, and we're going to return that value. That will be what the task is going to do. But of course, because here you're in your TypeScript environment, you can do whatever TypeScript can do. And I'm going to return some output data. The output data will be the message. And I will give a status of my task. That's going to be, you can see all the status you can have here. Of course, for us in that is going to be completed, but based on your code it can be completed. You can program your failure of the task as well. Alright, oh, I did a little mistake here. It's not input date but data, of course, and thanks to TypeScript, who can see all the errors in our typed variable, I can have a code that runs now. Alright, so I'm gonna leave my code editor for a second. And I'm gonna build my project. So now we have an index.js file, and I'm gonna execute it. Alright, our task worker is initialized, and now we have to define a workflow with that task. So I'm gonna create a new workflow. Let's call it demo flow. This is my super TypeScript demo. And I'm going to add a new task. I'm going to go, so it's not a system task, it's a worker task. And I'm going to call it the same way I define it in my code, my task. Good. I'm going to save my flow and run it. Can refresh. Yeah, the task has been executed successfully. Can introspect the output, and I got my message. Done. So now let's see how to execute workflows from applications. So for that, we're going to do something a little bit different here. We're going to import a new class. It's going to be the workflow executor. And in my main function, what I'm going to do is to create a new variable called client. So the same thing as I did for the worker. I'm going to wait for the client promise. So I have a connection. I'm going to define another constant called executor. That is a new workflow executor client. Once I have my workflow executor instance, I can start my workflow. In return, I will receive an execution ID that I can use to check the status of my workflow if it is a long time workflow, for example. So I'm gonna wait for my executor, and you can see here all the functions you can call from the SDK. I'm gonna do start workflow. Start workflow has one parameter that is a workflow request. The workflow request has 3 attributes: the name of the workflow, in our case it's going to be demo flow. Second parameter will be version. So you can execute one particular version. That can be interesting sometimes. And as in input parameters, we are going to send just an empty object here. We are going to console log the execution ID, so we're going to see what has been returned by the start workflow function. Alright, good, we're going to save. Going to go back to our terminal, and we're going to execute to see what's happening. First, of course, we need to rebuild our project, so npm run build and npm start. Boom, as you can see, there is an error. Yeah, and it's a normal error here. It's a 4.3, like a forbidden access, because yeah, our application, if we go back now to the console and we go to the access control on applications, and we're going to select our demo app, our application has just roles to unrestricted roles on workers to pull, update, log, and nothing on workflow manager. So I'm gonna check the workflow manager so we can start, pause, rerun, do everything, and now I'm gonna do npm start. And as you can see, everything went well this time, and we got an execution ID. I'm gonna copy the execution ID, go back to the console and go to the executions, and I'm going to search for it. So I'm going to go in workflow ID here, put what I copied, search. Yeah, I can see an introspect. I can see the status is completed. I can introspect the execution. There is my task. Go to the output, and yes, it is effectively coming from our app. Alright, I hope you have now everything you need to jumpstart your TypeScript project using Conductor. Don't forget to visit the repos, and hope to see you soon in one of our developer events. Thank you so much. Bye.